The last 2 weeks, I've done the scariest things imaginable to an artist. Take something you're unfamiliar with and put it out onto the internet for the entire world to see. I did it with demons the first week, and I did it with less humanoid characters like ponies the second week. And with the FNAF movie coming out in just a couple of weeks, I'd figured I'd hit you all with a double feature today. I'm going to attempt drawing not only robots, but venomized robots. I'm going to be taking some FNAF animatronics and drawing them as if they were possessed by the Venom symbiote, and altering some of the lore of FNAF to more fit the story. But without further ado, let's begin Five Nights at Venom's. Let's get started! Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was supposed to be a magical place where fantasy and fun came to life. Unfortunately, a long string of tragedies forced the establishment to shut down for good. William Afton and Henry Emily were co-founders of the Freddy Fazbear business, a chain of family-friendly restaurants full of food, entertainment, and of course, the lovable animatronics that everyone knew: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. But before there were these core 4 animatronics, Freddy only had 2 animatronics at its start: a golden bear named Fredbear, and a golden rabbit named Spring Bonnie. These 2 animatronics could also double as wearable suits thanks to an innovative technology developed by Henry called spring locks. The spring locks were a system of gears that would give the animatronics a wider range of motion, but could also retract to make room in the suit for a person to climb inside and operate. However, the spring locks were quite a finicky bit of technology and, under certain conditions, would be triggered without warning. One such condition was water. If the spring locks were to get wet by any means, the mechanisms would activate, an instance that happened a few too many times. One day in 1987, William Afton's oldest son, Michael, was bullying his younger brother who was scared of the animatronics, as some younger kids tended to be. As a joke, Michael and his friends put his brother's head inside the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic, which turned out to be a grim mistake. Terrified, the child began crying so hard that tears were running down his face, right onto the spring lock mechanisms of Fredbear. The springs immediately activated, crushing the child's head in the mouth of the golden bear. Stricken with grief over the loss of his son, William Afton stepped away from Freddy Fazbear's for a while, and channeled his grief in trying to find a way to bring his son back to life. He tried experimenting with many different mixes and methods and nearly venturing into the realm of magic, but nothing worked. One night when William was getting particularly frustrated, he grabbed his keys and went out for a drive. A storm had rolled in on this particular night, and combined with the pitch black sky, William couldn't see too far in front of him. Suddenly, from out of the darkness, a shapeless blob of black goo jumped onto William's windshield. Startled, William swerved and nearly drove off the road. He put his car in park and got out to get a better look at what had jump-scared him. But when he walked over to the front of his car, he found nothing. William could have sworn that he saw something jump out of him, but maybe he was exhausted from his grief. William got back in his car and continued driving aimlessly. Unbeknownst to him, the blob had hitched a ride on the back of William's car. By some sort of cosmic intervention, or even by William's subconscious mind, he ended up driving to the Fazbear restaurant, where it all went down. As he got closer to the establishment, he could see that somebody was standing outside the front door in the rain. It was Charlie Emily, Henry's daughter, who appeared to be locked outside of the restaurant. A thought ran through William's mind. This was his chance. A chance to take something away from Henry, the way Henry had taken something away from him with the spring locks. William pulled up to the restaurant and took Charlie into the alleyway behind Freddy's, killed her, and then laid her body next to a broken animatronic. This one looked quite different from the spring locks. It was more humanoid, with elongated limbs and stripes running down its arms and legs. William quickly returned to his car and drove off before anyone saw him hanging around the restaurant. But the blob that latched onto his car before stayed. It propelled itself over to the dying Charlie and began to wrap itself around the child, thinking she would act as a host for it. However, as the symbiote enveloped Charlie's body, it realized it was too late for the girl. Although her soul had not yet departed, Charlie's body was unusable. Instead, the symbiote blob extended its reach and began taking over the animatronic next to Charlie, combining Charlie's soul and the animatronic skeleton into one entity. When Henry noticed that Charlie was missing that night, he put the restaurant into lockdown, making sure no one can get in or out of the building until he found his daughter. Henry, the Fazbear staff, and even some empathetic parents searched the restaurant for hours to no avail. Charlie was nowhere to be found. Shortly afterwards, the police got involved and Charlie was reported as a missing persons case. The police suspected no foul play, nor did they suspect that William Afton had any involvement whatsoever, as nobody saw him hanging around the restaurant that night. The only people who did know the truth was, of course, William Afton himself, but also Charlie, whose soul was kept alive by the symbiote inside of the animatronic body. After the symbiote merged Charlie's soul with the puppet, they roamed around the restaurant in the shadows, waiting for their killer to return. Eventually, Afton did return to his position at Freddy Fazbear's and continued to work alongside Henry, but Henry noticed that there was something different about William. He had a hunger in his eyes, one that Henry couldn't quite place, but one that he felt was full of malicious intent. He decided to let it go, chalking it up to William losing his son, as Henry was now going through a similar experience. Afton continued working at the restaurant for a couple of weeks, learning about all the new characters that Henry introduced while he was away. Freddy has now had 4 additional animatronic characters: a blue rabbit named Bonnie, a yellow chicken named Chica, a red fox named Foxy, and the titular Freddy Fazbear himself. However, in all this time, William was trying to find a way to recapture that feeling from the night he killed Charlie. He came up with a plan to use the Spring Bonnie suit to lure children into the back of the restaurant. One night, Afton donned the Springlock suit and went through with his plans. Luckily for him, the Charlie puppet watching over the restaurant had not known that William was wearing the Bonnie suit, but when she heard the screams of children, she followed them into the back of the establishment, where she found the parts and service room, but no one inside. The puppet's symbiote searched around the room to find a source of the screams, but all that was in the room were spare parts and suits for all the characters. It was when the puppet decided to look inside one of the suits that she found the 5 dead children, each one of them stuffed inside a different animatronic. William Afton had struck again, and had gotten away with it once more. All the emotions in Charlie's soul, amplified by the symbiote, exploded at once. Charlie broke off 5 goopy tendrils of the symbiote and directed them toward each of the kids, repeating the process of saving their souls the way it had did with Charlie's on that stormy night. All 5 characters began moving at once, standing up from their idle positions, the vengeance in their souls being heightened by the symbiote, keeping each of them connected to this world. When word got out of the 5 missing children at Freddy Fazbear's, the business was ruined. The restaurant was shut down and searched by the police, but they weren't able to find any of the kids. Shortly after, the building was abandoned, though the city still employed night guards to keep an eye on it, in case any vandals, burglars, or teenagers wanted to try and break in. It didn't take long for rumors to start circulating about the abandoned building. People who claimed they once held jobs as a night guard at Freddy's swore they saw the animatronics move around at night. It didn't help that it was a well-known fact that the abandoned building went through night guards at an alarming rate. It seemed like every week there was a new ad in the paper saying that Freddy's was looking to hire a new night guard. Eventually, these rumors found their way to William Afton, who was still living his life scot-free. When he first heard that the animatronic characters moved around on their own, he was skeptical. After all, they were just machines with limited pre-programmed movements, and who would take the time to program walking animations into the animatronics of an abandoned family restaurant? But the longer he thought about it, the more he feared it might have been his own doing. It was possible that when he put each of the kids in a suit to hide them from the police, that the ghost of the children had possessed the hollow shells of the animatronics. He had to see it for himself in order to ease his mind. Afton applied to the night guard position under the alias Dave Miller and got the job. He arrived at the restaurant to begin his shift, nervous of what he might find. On the first night, nothing happened. All the animatronics stayed on stage, perfectly still. On the second night, though, things got weird. While cycling through the camera screens in the office, Afton saw that the camera pointed at the main animatronics cut to static, before returning to normal. However, when the camera feed came back, Afton realized that there was one less animatronic on stage. Throughout the rest of Afton's shift, the characters continued moving around the restaurant, giving Afton all the proof he needed. On the third night, Afton came prepared. He had spent the day making a perfect replica of a tool that was used when Freddy Fazbear's was still in business to shut down an animatronic in case it needed to be repaired or dismantled. Afton entered the abandoned building, ready to shut down all the animatronics over the course of his shift. But when he approached the main stage, before they could start moving, he saw something he didn't quite expect. He couldn't see it through the poor quality of the cameras, but all the animatronics were covered in a veiny, goopy substance. Gone were the simple geometric limbs, replaced instead with bulging tentacles that looked almost like muscles. Where their round mechanical eyes were, sat solid white shapes that emitted a faint glow. Even the colors of some of the characters weren't quite the same. Of course, their bodies were darker and desaturated from being abandoned for so long, but some of them also had an entirely different hue to them. If Afton hadn't spent so much time hanging around these characters while he was working at Freddy's, he might not have even recognized them. His plan quickly went south as he realized he no longer knew how to dismantle the animatronics in their new form. That's when he heard from behind him, the sound of footsteps, those heavier than a normal person's. He turned around and saw the puppet looming over him, bearing its sharp teeth and long, prehensile tongue. Afton turned back to the stage to see that the animatronics there were also looking at him. They all began taking slow, heavy steps towards him. He tried to run, but the puppet raised its hand and shot a tendril at Afton that wrapped around his leg. The tendril began pulling him back towards the puppet. Afton fished through his pockets until he found his lighter. He flicked it on and held it out toward the tendril around his leg. The puppet screeched in agony and retracted the tendril. Afton wasted no time. He got up and ran to the security office, with the venomized animatronics close behind. The puppet shot another tendril at him, but Afton dived through a nearby doorway to avoid it. He picked himself up off the ground and looked around. The room he dove into was musty and damp. There were several holes in the ceiling, as well as a few puddles all across the cracked tile floor. As his head swiveled around the room, Afton saw that it was pretty barren, until he came across his saving grace. In the corner of the room, damaged by the elements but mostly still intact, was the spring bodysuit. The same suit Afton wore when he killed the children whose souls were now chasing him. With no other immediate options available, Afton put on the springlock suit, thinking it would give him at least some protection against these vengeful spirits. Unfortunately, it had the exact opposite effect. Upon seeing the spring bodysuit up and moving again, the vengeful spirits of the children grew even angrier. With all of their emotions heightened by the symbiote, they surrounded Afton, ready to take revenge. Afton tried to find a way to escape, but he was backed against a wall. He slipped and fell into a puddle, and along with his profuse sweating, it happened again. The damaged spring locks activated in response to the water and forcibly snapped into position, with no regard for the person still inside. The mechanisms pierced through every part of Afton's body as his terrified screams filled the room. Having seen Afton in horrible pain, the venomized animatronics left his body to rot in the suit, the same way he had done to them. Afton laid on the floor bleeding out. He was about to close his eyes and accept his fate when he heard something. Though his vision was blurred and fading fast, Afton swore he saw another one of those globs, similar to the one that jumped on his windshield, approaching him. He assumed it was all the blood around him, but this one seemed more red in color. I'm just going to say these are probably my favorite pieces I've made on this channel to date. I'm just so happy how they turned out. It was so much fun doing the goop of the venom and the veins and everything. And I almost wish I could have put design notes in this episode because I really want to talk about them. Comment down below if you want to see a part 2 of this. I did leave it a bit open-ended, so if you want, we could always cover more FNAF games because, as we know, SpringTrap always comes back. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you had fun with this video, feel free to hit the like button, because if you hit the like button, you can reach the ending. But if you hit the share button and the like button, then you get the secret lore. Try it out. And if you like overarching stories like this, I highly recommend my Mortal Kombat as Power Ranger series, where I take Mortal Kombat characters and make them a Power Rangers team. Pretty self-explanatory, but if you want to see that, the first part of that will be up here. And with that being said, I've been KyngPin Creations, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everybody. Oh, forgot to mention, if you want to know what music I was listening to while working on this, the playlist link will be down in the description below. Okay, see ya!